A true prospect killer, Gervonta Davis is once again on the hunt. This time, standing in his way is Frank Martin, who considers himself the future of boxing.
Lightning quick!
Will it be another beating from Gervonta or the biggest upset of the decade? Find out now. Language of facts. As usual, we start this video by sticking to the facts. As we know, a fighter's experience is a crucial factor in boxing, and typically the fighter with more fights tends to have the upper hand. By the way, in 80% of my breakdowns, the statistics accurately predict the winner. Let's start with Gervonta. His record is 29-0 with 27 knockouts, compared to Frank's record of 18-0 with 12 knockouts. So it's obvious that Frank is fresh blood in boxing because Gervonta's opponents have a combined record of 483 wins and 126 losses with a 20% loss rate. Martin's opponents, on the other hand, have a record of just 161 wins and 92 losses with a 57% loss rate. Interestingly, both of them are southpaws, which is not good for Frank. And this already tells us that the difference in experience is enormous. All of Gervonta's opponents were stronger. I wouldn't say Gervonta has fought the best, but only half of his list were journeymen, while Martin has faced only a few strong opponents in his career. But maybe Martin is just a dark horse waiting to cause an upset? Let's figure it out. Gervonta Davis. Now let's move to the breakdown of Gervonta Davis. Finally, Gervonta has a southpaw opponent, and the last time Tank fought a southpaw, he showcased his ability to roll with and evade the southpaw left hand. Can he do the same against Frank Martin? Most southpaws are better at fighting in an open stance than a closed one, but Davis fights just as well in a closed stance. Martin will look amateurish when he gets in with Davis, because Gervonta's traps for southpaws are unique. The most interesting thing about Gervonta Davis is how he develops his attacks for both southpaw and orthodox opponents. Essentially, he doesn't usually follow a specific game plan, but rather adapts his classic attacks to each opponent. He mixes them up to keep his opponents guessing. He mixes them up to hide the knockout punch, and he has dozens of ways to do this. For example, in the fight against Barrios, Gervonta deliberately throws his punches from a lower position, making the opponent get used to the idea that a dive will be followed by a body hook. Once Barrios got used to this, there was a surprise for him. He consistently confused Barrios with his movements, hitting both the body and the head. It sounds simple, but you need to be a master of feints to do this effectively. Gervonta Davis is a master at working the body to manipulate his opponent's guard. If Barrios made a mistake and took a hit to the head, what happened with Garcia was simply a brilliant victory. One of the most intriguing aspects of Davis's fighting style is his ability to deliver knockout blows with an astonishingly low volume of punches. While other fighters might rely on high-output combinations, Davis prefers a more measured approach. He conserves his energy, allowing him to maximize the impact of his shots, which is particularly crucial in longer fights.
But, oh my! Wow.
He is constantly feinting to gauge how opponents react, analyzing their tendencies and openings for his devastating encounters. Davis has a go-to move in almost every fight, jabbing his opponent, then slipping and counterattacking with a hook. His footwork is at a completely different level. Gervonta constantly moves, pivots, and easily exits the distance, making his defense like a game of chess with too many defensive techniques and combinations to predict. When Davis attacks, he has plenty of tricks up his sleeve too. For example, he flies in with a lead hook, but not directly at his opponent like Garcia would. Tank instead takes a slight step to the side to make it difficult for his opponent to counterattack. Everything he does is calculated to the extreme. Gervonta's strength lies in his reflexes and accuracy. Everything happens within inches of deadly attacks, and due to his speed advantage, he can often land a direct hit and then make a dive to avoid a counterattack. But it's important not to forget that Gervonta is not just a counterattacker. He's versatile. When he smells blood, he can destroy his opponent by walking them down with a high guard.
Davis thought Santa Cruz was going to fold from his... Oh my!
Davis thought Santa Cruz was going to fold from his slipping and parrying anything that comes back at him. A great example, of course, is his killer blow on Leo Santa Cruz, and it's precisely this that will come in handy in the fight with Frank, and could be a key factor for victory. Frank Martin. Frank Martin is one of the fastest fighters in his weight class, which you can clearly see in his fight against Harutunian. Martin is so quick that it sometimes seems like he's hacking the matrix when it comes to footwork.
Because of
He often uses his jab and footwork to cut angles and pivots to get behind his opponent, keeping himself completely safe after launching his attacks. Martin's jab work is on a whole new level. He's like a true conductor, constantly keeping his opponent at bay with the jab. While most fighters use their jab for 50–60% of their attacks, for Martin, 95% of his attacks are jabs. He feels most comfortable at mid-range, often throwing 5–10 feint jabs until he finds the right moment for a real one, then a double jab, and only then does he move into full combos.
I like getting hit.
Down it goes!
None of this works at long or short range, so if you watch all of Frank's fights, he always maintains this exact distance. This helps him keep his opponent under pressure. He's always close, but not close enough to get hit. With the jab, he adds straight punches to the body or head at the right moments. Marinez tried to outplay him with his jab, but it was laughable. He tried to throw a check hook and hit preemptively, but Martin had an answer for everything. Frank's fight rhythm is steady. He gradually wears down his opponents, trying to exhaust them. For example, he hit Marinez with a jab body punch combo for 9 rounds, but when it came to the final rounds, he switched to beast mode.
Has been hurt. And the other right hook hurt Marinez.
It was as if he hadn't fought before. He increased his attacks by 300%, started throwing hooks that he rarely uses in the early rounds, and simply destroyed Marinez until he finished the fight in the 10th round. This is Frank's main strength. No one is as fresh in the later rounds as he is. Martin's endurance is on a whole other level. Almost all his knockouts have come in the final rounds, and that's no coincidence. In this, he is similar to Gervonta, as they are both very cautious, using jabs and feints, waiting for the best moment to knock out their opponent in the second half of the fight. Because of this, Martin often doesn't get a knockout simply because he runs out of time, but he confidently wins decisions, like when he almost knocked out Harutunian in the final rounds.
There's a nice, although Frank Martin trying to open up a lead at the end of round 11. That's good. That's where it's better.
But Artem survived. For those predicting a Gervonta knockout in the later rounds, forget about it. But Martin's style is not perfect. As strong as he is at mid-range, he is equally weak in close range. In every fight, as soon as his opponent manages to get past his jab and close the distance, he loses all his skills, takes hits, and looks out of place. He consistently stood right in front of him, leaning over his front foot. He wasn't countering or in a position to counter. He was just standing in range and got hit a lot, especially to the body. Artem isn't Tank. You can't just stand in his range and let him get his shots off, so to speak. Nevertheless, Martin is still well-rounded for Tank. He isn't a small guy. His angles are what would trouble Tank the most. Tank is used to fighting guys who back up in straight lines. Martin does a very good job of changing his angles and punching from them. Trust me, you'll see Tank punching at air all night while Martin keeps peppering him with shots he doesn't see. But will that be enough to beat Gervonta? Let's go on. First of all, it's worth recalling a well-known story that Martin himself has mentioned. He and Gervonta sparred together some time ago, and according to all present, Frank clearly dominated that sparring session, which deeply affected Davis and caused him to hold a grudge. This is one of the main reasons why Frank is given so many chances. But to be fair, fighters often lose in sparring. It's a completely different thing. Frank is good, but he was practically designed in a lab to get knocked out by Tank Davis. I think Frank Martin is in for a Spence Crawford-style beating. The guy is a fish out of water anywhere outside the pocket. He's very limited. Mid-range is where Tank is going to destroy him. On the outside, Tank can set lateral traps, and if need be, Tank has demonstrated at least some ability to walk fighters down with an active high guard. Frank is easy work stylistically. He spends way too much time standing in mid-range without punching. This is the easiest fight Tank could possibly make. An inside fighter who can be both counter-punched and outboxed is literally his bread and butter. Tank's mid-range, counter-punching, and lateral traps are basically his entire game, so that means he won't be worse in that range, but will definitely dominate in others. My prediction: Gervonta wins by decision. What do you think? Who will win this fight and how? Let me know in the comments.